we do all sorts of really cool value adds, but yeah, anybody who's got an existing community to leverage, and also they want to reward their community for that support. This is a everybody wins kind of game, and plus it's just a little bit of financial risk, a little bit of some FOMO games, and playing stuff. At the end of the day, you still get a really sweet item, but you could also walk away possibly winning in a sense, right?
Layer 1 is a podcast and community dedicated to helping you master all things crypto. We'll be bringing you the best interviews with project executives, technical analysis for trading of the most popular cryptocurrencies, and insight into what's actually happening behind the scenes.
As you join us each episode, you're going to hear about tokens, fundraisers, investments, and even crypto conspiracies. But please remember that nothing we say should be considered financial or legal advice.
Come join us on this journey, and welcome to Layer 1.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with yet another episode of the Layer 1 podcast. We've had some really awesome guests lately. Hopefully you have enjoyed them. We've got another great one here today. But before we get there, Q, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I don't have coronavirus yet, so I'm actually having a good week. I'm not having as good a week as Drew because he has been attending a lot of conferences. But anyways, I'll get right to it. We have Drew Harding from MetaFactory. The platform's looking to democratize brand creation and also create and trade digiphysical goods, which is something we'll get to in the episode. But Drew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Yeah, been on the conference circuit for the last couple of weeks, which tends to take its toll, but obviously it's really exciting. Great to collaborate in real life, or in meet space, as we like to say, with everybody in the industry, and see old and new faces, and see what's happening, how things are evolving. And now in one of those positions where also working on a new project, so kind of trying to get myself out there and tell everybody kind of the craziness we've been up to. So.
Well, I got to hand it to you, man. You were super accommodating. I think I asked you about the interview on Sunday because we had like a reschedule, and you kind of were just like, yeah, let's do it. And you're in the middle of this huge conference trip. So I appreciate you doing that. And it looks like you're working hard, and that's going to pay dividends for you. But before we get into MetaFactory, Drew, let's talk your life before crypto, your life before tech, or just your life in general, man. I want to hear it.
Sure. Tech's been a long stint. I've definitely kind of had my share of different jobs and or careers, many different lives, if you will. Primarily focused on, I guess, business development, client management, marketing, and then, in the tech space, really focused and kind of honed in and kind of found my niche in product strategy, especially around helping startups to think through what they're building, both at a UX UI level, and then also from like a business development, product market fit, strategic level as well. So going back, I guess, to the most immediate, I founded a pair of sister companies, web mobile application development agencies. And that's kind of where I was for a good decade before my entrance into crypto space officially. So obviously, my entry into crypto and blockchain was through Bitcoin, through like everybody else, poking around the dark web, checking out what's going on with like gambling apps and these kind of like all the fun toys. That was all that existed back then. But yeah, realistically, I talked to a friend one day. He told me about it. I went home, read the white paper, and kind of immediately was enamored. Fell in love with it from a philosophical standpoint. And then I was just kind of like watching, waiting, mining, speculating, the whole thing. And then 16, on the back of the Ethereum ICO and watching what was happening with kind of the ICO craze going into 2017, realized, obviously there was a bit of a hype and some bubble going on, but the reality was the focus was being placed on like real business applications or use cases for the most part. Whether that was a push, a scam, a speculation or not, it was kind of I was more just interested and realized at that point, like, okay, this is becoming a real industry. And so I ended up around beginning of 17 talking to my business partner and said, look, this is something I want to put my full-time focus on. From our dev agency perspective, it was a little premature to kind of start positioning like selling blockchain services. We're hyper focused on kind of like LA entertainment market and like entertainment media. And people are still trying to wrap their head around what's happening in the space and like what's going on. But yeah, I was doing bounties, design competition stuff, ended up winning one of those, got involved with that project, Pillar Wallet, which I'm still head of product and working on with them. And then, yeah, just, really immersed myself in the space, got to know people down the rabbit hole, and really got involved with a couple of prominent DAOs. Actually was kind of one of the founders behind specifically the MetaCartel DAO. And that has definitely been kind of a rocket ship in the sense of propelling my own career, network, understanding of the space in a significant way. So
Yeah, we'll talk MetaCartel, we'll talk MetaCartel Ventures, we'll talk MetaFactory, how all these things work together, because it is that big ecosystem. But I will say, first of all, based on your comments there, that in 2017, you were never too early. All you needed was the pitch deck and the white paper, and you could have raised 100 mil, man. But
for sure.
So you got involved in the Ethereum ecosystem. You got involved with who you're involved with now. How, like, first of all, explain MetaCartel, how it was formed, and then how it kind of mixes with what you guys are doing at MetaFactory and MetaCartel DAO and things like that.
Sure. Yeah, so it was actually the another circuit event, the Ethereum San Francisco SF hackathon in 2018. There was a group that was working on kind of a hackathon project around meta transactions, and it was kind of right at that point when the conversation of like how meta transactions can have a pretty significant impact in terms of improving user experience for dApps and in the space. And it was us kind of joking around like, let's create let's all like band together, create a Telegram group, working group, and basically that 10 people turned into 20, turned into 30, 40, multiple groups. And then around the following spring, their introduction and announcement of the Moloch DAO was made. And that was Amin and James Young, who kind of worked on the contracts and that stuff, are peripherally involved with our group, now a lot closer as well. James Young specifically is definitely a member of MetaCartel. They had this whole framework, and what we liked about what they were doing from like the DAO perspective, it was very much like an emergent bottom up thing versus these big ICOs, kind of monolithic, top down. We're gonna try and solve all problems and attack it that way. It was kind of like the Notepad versus the Microsoft Word, if you will. And so we saw the big announcement at the Ethereal New York conference, immediately forked the code and launched MetaCartel DAO. And whereas Moloch was primarily focused on ETH2 research and furthering that kind of endeavor, MetaCartel decided we were going to focus on the consumer-facing user experience and dApp development. The main kind of goal was we're going to do micro grants around, to different projects that we think are really pushing the envelope, really improving user experience, and they, wrap them into kind of our world. And, as we've learned and as we've grown, we realize that it's the power of MetaCartel and like the value we can provide is less the actual financials behind the grant, but the signal of our community and the support we can bring, and also getting other projects who are associated either directly or peripherally with the DAO to use and really kind of create that Lego effect, if you will, that's become so prominent as like a DeFi theme and other places. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, communities is certainly a big part of crypto. I mean, whether it's a specific project community or kind of the broader crypto community, communities and networks, right, is obviously very pervasive through crypto. So just, I guess, so people understand, right, what is the size of MetaCartel, and what are kind of some of the types of members there that could provide assistance alongside these kind of mini grants or smaller grants that you guys are giving? Because it's a pretty significant organization.
Yeah, for sure. Officially, I believe we're about 65 members and growing. That's everything from individuals to actual projects themselves. The ecosystem of greater projects, working groups, and kind of like peripherally associated members, I would probably put that number closer to like 500-600.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a pretty significant reach in that sense. I believe there's 70 to 80 different Telegram groups at this point. It's pretty ridiculous. We've basically single-handedly been there's a power use application called Telefuel that's kind of like the Telegram management, pro management, and so we've been working with them really closely because that's become kind of critical to manage all these groups and stuff. But yeah, in terms of how you get involved, the core and primary way is via Tribute. So you put ETH into, it's basically 1 ETH per share. You buy into the DAO. Your money goes into the bank, the DAO bank, which is where we pull grants from. The projects we request, a higher tribute than members. And we're all voting against whether to fund a grant or proposal or not. The other side of it is individuals can kind of earn their way in through doing work for the DAO, doing work through projects. The projects themselves, the way it works is we actually give them DAO shares as grants, and then they kind of quit those out and then take the funds to like fund their projects. But examples of work being done, we had a gentleman recently joined. He did full translation of most of our docs and forum stuff into Chinese, so helping to kind of broaden our reach into new communities and networks and stuff like that. People who have hosted meetups, projects, conferences, done talks, like various things to kind of just help carry the flag and grow like our mission and message, if you will. So that's kind of like the involvement happening there for process.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's super helpful. These DAOs, I think, are somewhat new for a lot of people, right? These decentralized autonomous organizations, and maybe people have been introduced to them through projects that they hold tokens of or projects that they follow. But a lot of times, it seems like DAOs kind of struggle with some of the things maybe proof of stake struggles with, right? Where those early entrants into the DAO have kind of most of the voting weight, and at the end of the day, they're the ones that kind of decide where things go with whatever that DAO's goal is. Have you guys suffered from any problems like that, or has the DAO been relatively successful?
Yeah, no, just because of the caps we actually put on that. So you can't basically just like buy like a ton of voting weight in MetaCartel. We actually restrict the amount of tribute that can be given by an individual or a project. We cap it so that everyone's kind of at that same playing field. Projects typically tribute more than like an individual, and that's for obvious reasons. Sure. They have bigger banks and whatnot. But yeah, generally that hasn't become an issue for us because everyone's kind of like at the same playing level. Like if a VC came in and said, "Hey, we want to put $1 million into this, but we want like the share weight," we would basically just say no. It doesn't incentivize our like goals in any beneficial way. So,
Yeah, I do want to see how you kind of got to this point with MetaFactory, because it does have a feel of like fashion, being involved with culture. That's obviously a huge part. So I wonder if you don't have that background in fashion, but I do want to talk about kind of what MetaFactory does, right? Like for the people that haven't heard about it, let's talk about what MetaFactory does and kind of the genesis of the idea, because it again, it all comes back to culture, brand, collectibles. and things like that, both in the physical world and the emerging metaverses that are super exciting to me and a lot of my colleagues. So take us through kind of the genesis of MetaFactory and what MetaFactory is planning on doing.
Yeah, I'll actually take a step back to your point about culture because I think that it's pretty relevant. One thing that is really powerful about Moloch DAOs is kind of like their their basic kind of primitive level approach in that there's enough technology for us to enable the coordination and secure funds in a way that people aren't gonna someone's not gonna run off with all the money, or you're not gonna feel like you're locked into a vote or a decision that you don't agree with. um, and I think that's also an acknowledgement around technology isn't able to solve what are fundamentally human coordination problems and challenges. And I think a lot of the people who have been exposed to Molochs and kind of like the MetaCartel experience, if you will, they've realized that these are fundamentally human coordination issues. And these are things that, yeah, if we can wrap some powerful technology around it, again, to secure funds, to make governance and voting easy and facilitate those types of things, that's really powerful and great. But at the end of the day, we still need to decide and like which direction we're moving and what we support and what our goals are as an organization. And to your point, like then we've realized also kind of to one of my earlier comments, the power behind and the value behind what MetaCartel can do is signal, right? And that's a cultural signal. We support this team because of what they're trying to do in the space and how they've approached or solved this problem. We really believe they can push the needle and bring new users into the space, or they can solve some sort of fundamental use case or problem, add value in some way. So, and as we've grown, looking outside, obviously most of the grants come from projects and teams and stuff that are outside of the MetaCartel directly. They apply, we go through the proposals, grant or vote, give them a grant. And then as we've grown and our own talent pool has grown and we've started to kind of mix all our ideas, we've started to incubate ideas directly from within the MetaCartel DAO. So that MetaFactory was one of the first of those that was kind of us bullshitting, for lack of a better term, like thinking about what we could do. And specifically, we saw what happened with the Unisocks experiment. So taking a physical good, putting it on a bonding curve, tokenizing it, and watch that experiment. That that intrigued a lot of people. And then it turned into, we really need better swag. We need some better, some better, just instead of logo printed shirts, we need some like really cool fashion, and recognizing fashion is just an extension of art in terms of building culture and like helping to move that needle. That was kind of, that conversation was happening in Osaka. Props to actually Aave, because they had this, which is a DeFi protocol. They had this yellow shirt. First of all, yellow. No one likes a yellow shirt. And it had this like little sushi design with the Aave ghost. And it was just like really well done. And I was like, this is a perfect example. Like first day, within 2 hours, everyone had rushed to that booth and grabbed one of their shirts. And I was just like, okay, there's something here, right? So we started to talk and started to look at like what could be done. And the idea was like, all right, well, let's look at Unisoc specifically. And what they did, again, they tokenized an item and they put it on a bonding curve. I think it worked really well because the product was the brand, was the token in that situation. We started to look at like brands specifically and realize that's a tricky, to jump straight to the brand conversation is kind of a tricky problem. Also, we obviously, for coming from like a DAO mindset and stuff, we're like, let's wrap DAOs around it and let's give communities governance tools and all this stuff. And then we're like, okay, wait, like pull it back a little bit, because we wanted to we recognize that physical apparel specifically can serve as a really powerful anchor point in terms of people's understanding, like attracting audiences that are outside of this space, like non-crypto native audiences, and saying like, that's a really dope jacket, or that's a really cool hat, and that as a carrot to bring people into an experience that is Web3 and has now what is this collectible behind it? What is this DeFi, because these things are interest bearing? What is like, kind of all these concepts that come with that? We recognize like the power of that as well. So we wanted to reduce the complexity and barrier to entry for those audiences, and really see if we could use this as a way to build audiences and bridges into the hype beast culture and those types of communities. So yeah, we kind of isolated, well, let's look at product specific auctions instead of just like the brand in its entirety. And as an individual product on because if you do a brand token too, going back to the bonding curve, you introduce one product, that's fine. But if you introduce a second product and there's a single token, how does the market play that? Does it readjust now because that token is redeemable for multiple products? There's also some question around, in those models, the token is separate from the product itself. So you're kind of encouraging market speculation, which is fine in its own right, but we wanted to really focus on the products themselves, selling the products, elevating the creators who are creating these products and designing these things, and then rewarding the community who's actually buying these things versus somebody who may not be interested in the brand or the token at all and is just playing the market. They're speculating on a token. So kind of, again, dialed it back. Then also like looking at the production side of all this stuff, we're really focused on custom cut and sew creations. So not on demand printing, very simple stuff, but like ground up builds. Lead times on these things can be up to 3 months. The cost to produce a single item because of just, again, custom built is pretty expensive. So you want to know exactly how many you're producing. In a situation where it's on a bonding curve and you can redeem it at any point, how do you handle the production of that, right? Do you sell the like when someone redeems, do you make one item, wait the really long lead time, pay the cost of that single item? Or do you just, okay, I have 100 tokens in the market, I know that's going to be the max amount we could do, we produce all of them, and we say, okay, we'll just ship them to people as they redeem. Mm-hmm. Well, how do you handle sizing choices at that point? How do you handle so I went very deep down the production, and to be being honest, I have no background in fashion. I have no background in apparel creation in any way. Just had to really kind of dig in and think through the actual fulfillment and kind of execution side of all this. So we went back to, okay, we can do the same thing though, where it's on an appreciating price curve. And, to take a step back. So this was kind of some of the thought process around Unisocks and that experiment and what happened there and where my mind was going. And so we said, okay, well, what do we want to do? It's like, we want to sell really awesome apparel, but at the same time, you're looking at like, the explosion of collectibles and NFTs and in land sales too, right? Virtual land sales, and what's the growth of these metaverse type platforms, being Decentraland kind of the first, Crypto Voxels shortly thereafter. You now have Sandbox and Somnium and some of these others starting to emerge. We're like, what if we did like a digital complement to the physical piece? So we both sell a physical item, but then offer a digital wearable as like a complementary piece. And
that's where digital physical comes in. Digiphysical.
Yeah, that's the digiphysical piece of it, and we're really excited about that. And we thought, again, there's this anchor point for people who don't really get the digital side or care too much in the physical. But I actually believe we will trend very strongly towards like digital only apparel brands in the future. If you believe that this metaverse thing can exist, which I believe it's a matter of time. We've seen the Second Life and the Sims and all these experiments in the past. And one of the reasons why I'm more bullish, or I see the potential here now, is because of Ethereum and that basically trustless value transfer and accrual layer that exists in those payment rails that are basically built into now that experience and in a decentralized kind of, again, trustless way. So I think that's something that people who may have come from like the second world or the second life or kind of metaverse of the past or like that world may not see or may be starting to realize why that traction is picking up. So digiphysical, we're like, man, let's throw some like FOMO mechanics in there. Let's go back to the old days, throw some like crazy game mechanics in it. So following the same bonding curve model, we decided, well, we can just run it the same way, but not a bonding curve token where you're buying the item and every purchase is just appreciating the price.
Mm-hmm.
And you create the hook on the end because the last person to buy actually gets it free. So that's everybody's like maybe vying for what's going to happen last. The other interesting thing is there's a countdown. So we do a fixed duration sale. And this goes back to some of our production challenges, but we do a fixed duration sale where each purchase is also incrementing the countdown timer of the auction. And that amount of time is also incrementing down. So it might be 12, then 6, then 4, then 2. So everybody at the end is kind of maybe vying for like that last item. And in that model, so in thinking about the production side of it, again, if we do a fixed duration, what we're actually creating is like a crowdfunding platform for that product.
Right.
So at the end of the sale, we know exactly how many were sold. So we can like put in the order and then we can actually capture and say, hey, okay, give us your sizing. You're like small, medium, large, extra large. And, you know, we can actually give you proper sizing and then capture shipping information. And we can streamline our costs that way because we know exactly how many to make and we can avoid waste where we're only producing as many as have been ordered, which is also part of the scarcity thing. If we have like, it's supposed to be scarce, but it's sitting in a corner somewhere and like big, high, like, you know, or high value or luxury brands, the way they deal with that is the end of every year, they burn all those items to make sure they don't get into the market. And it's super like, that's messed up, you know? So we want to avoid any of that kind of stuff. So we came into that model and we're like, this is pretty cool. Yeah. You know, it was one of those things too, where it rewarded the earliest buyers versus the later buyers. Because what we're doing is also giving a share of the profits back to everyone who participates in that profit pool of the profit pool, I should say. Ran some testing and realized there were some challenges around, you know, a rush in for people to buy items, because if the bid's always incrementing, a lot of people might get failed transaction because the price they were trying to get has now bumped up. And so there's little like UX challenges, and that led us to a kind of another model, and which is a blind bid where everyone bids the max amount they're willing to pay. The highest bidder wins, but they pay the second highest bidder's price. Second highest bidder pays the third highest bidder's price. This is known as a Vic-Ray auction, or you know, a slight modification of the Vic-Ray auction. And in that model, we liked it because it also rewards the largest supporter or buyer of the most and proportionately versus the earliest. Through this whole thing, we've kind of realized that the factory piece of MetaFactory, beyond making clothes, can also represent different sale types and contract types and approaches and various things. We can do direct additional sales. So yeah, this has been all kind of a lot, again, throwing all the pieces in the cauldron, mixing it around, seeing what pops out, what works, where we hit challenges. And yeah, so anyways,
No, I like this idea of kind of throwing everything that you can kind of at a wall and seeing what sticks, right? Because that's what you guys are doing. You're very much doing that. And just for someone who maybe is not familiar, obviously, with the ecosystem, I said it before the podcast, but there's so many things going on. You can kind of get lost in everything. So just for someone that never had heard about that Unisoc model, can you like break that down within 20 seconds? So like a user would go on, they would buy this sock and get the associated token, and then
it's actually, that's more akin to kind of what MetaFactory is doing. What Unisocs did is you hop in, you buy a token. the token, as more people buy this token, it appreciates. It's pegged to a curve, that like an appreciating
Yep.
curve.
Yep.
The more people who buy it, the hype model, the higher that token price goes. Now, if you bought it really low, you could then sell it back to the curve, which will lower it, send it back down the curve, and kind of net that speculative profit. Or you can redeem that token at any point for a pair of socks.
So when we're talking about kind of adoption, and we've had obviously a lot of people that are pushing products and pushing platforms to an audience on this podcast, right? When we talk to these people, a lot of times there's two approaches, right? Like they can either from the ground up create this community grassroots from inside of crypto and have the user base there, or they can go outside of crypto, try to kind of partner or work business development and try to bring like a platform that's not currently crypto and bring all those users kind of in one fell swoop, right? So you
Right.
talked about Off-White, you talked about Yeezy and some of your guys' blogs and stuff like that. What is the strategy here? Is it to go and create a grassroots? Is it more so to go and create these grassroots through crypto, or is it going to big branding companies and say, hey, look, you can move your physical goods onto a digital network?
Totally. I would say recognizing that a lot of like kind of the crazy mechanics and the audience that we're appealing to and will be the first to really grasp this, we're definitely focused immediately kind of on the crypto community. The other kind of initial target in terms of creators and artists, we've teamed up and aligned with some of the top artists and NFT creators in the space. So all the kind of launch partners we announced, they're selling for top dollar on super rare and known origin, these art marketplaces, and they're kind of the people who understand the potential for crypto art or NFT art, tokenized art, are also in the space, I think, recognizing that these could be very, very large artists in the future. This format could and likely will be a very, very prominent and large format in the future. So they're also the first ones to really understand the appeal and the potential market value or premium commanded by these early works. So we reached out to those guys. We've aligned with them, a partnership with them, and say, look, we can offer you this brand new canvas in physical apparel. And we believe that we will intend to reach non-crypto native audiences and grow outside of this. But it's really like anything else, very much a bottom-up, emergent kind of dog fooding of, let's figure out what's working, including different auction models. We're going to get some great data and feedback on that. And then I think once we've really kind of honed the specific value, we can start to approach these existing Web2 or non-internet based kind of communities or brands or creators and say, hey, check out this kind of hype auction model and this approach we're doing for limited run custom goods. Would you be interested in utilizing this, for instance? I think we're going to be, easy targets are kind of, again, creators, musicians, rappers. We're already talking with some of these people. We're already looking outside of the physical apparel space too. So skate decks, custom keyboards. So the model can really work for anything. Apparel was kind of just a rather low hanging fruit and approach. And a part of that was facilitated by an amazing relationship with a production company who kind of handles all that for us, because we're very much like a technology provider, auction platform, community stimulation, kind of that's really our value add to the whole thing.
Gotcha. Yeah. And not to cut you off, I think there's an important piece here too, as you guys look to, continue down that route of bringing those, as you would say, Web2 designers on board into this setup. Obviously scarcity and kind of this store of value relation to scarcity is a big narrative within crypto, big with Bitcoin, but that value doesn't really, or I guess that benefit doesn't really exist unless there's demand on the other side, right? Scarcity and supply is only so successful if there's a certain amount of demand. So within the crypto community, crypto community to me obviously doesn't like scream a fashion community, right?
Yeah.
Certainly screams a collectible community or a speculative community. So what kind of demand have you guys seen thus far as you look, down the road at maybe a certain quarter or a certain year to go ahead and expand to some of those other communities with some demand in crypto that you've built already?
Yeah, and recognizing that we and also again in the interest of kind of like dogfooding our own experiment and putting our own I guess efforts on the line, we're going to be launching with a MetaFactory design of our own creation and kind of like our own brand, if you will. It's not really our intention to create a brand necessarily. I think that may naturally occur, but this gives us an opportunity to again test things. If something goes sour, it's not affecting like a partner artist or something like that. And the MetaFactory being born out of MetaCartel, we have this big community of individuals who are super excited about this swag. They've seen it, they want it. The greater kind of ecosystem, people are starting to actually. I've been surprised actually by the responses from people who aren't involved in kind of MetaCartel and being like, "That's a dope jacket. I really like that. I want that. I want to wear it." And then, yeah, you start to translate this into actual crypto artists and the greater Web3. And I think most of the interest for that is not maybe even to wear the item as much as it being a collector's item. I mean, you have, looking at, again, non-crypto examples with Supreme or similar, people are buying bricks with Supreme stamped on them. People are buying
Yeah.
like, and these go straight to a shelf, or they buy some shirt or something and that goes straight to a vacuum sealed container. So the intention is not always to wear, and this is kind of where the digi side of the physical comes into play too, because if you do wear a physical piece, you kind of have this, it naturally degrades over time.
Yep.
Even if you're not wearing it, just physical, air, everything, degrades. So you have, eventually that's, going down. The digital, if you believe in the growth of this metaverse, if you believe in the potential or the growth of that artist who created that piece in terms of like the premium they can command, it's obviously going to appreciate in that sense. But what we also did is, okay, we want to reward the buyers with a piece of the profit pool, like I was saying. How can we, like, what's the best way to do that? And we came across an opportunity where everything, first of all, is going to be sold in DAI. And the reason for this is if you lock up ETH and the market's over like a week-long auction or sale and the ETH goes to the moon or tanks, either way, you're going to be all upset. It's frustrating, right? So go to DAI. What we do is the percentage or the share of the profit pool that goes to our supporters, we split that proportionately based on when they got in or how much they paid on the auction. And we infuse that directly into the digital NFT that comes with that physical piece. And what that means is, and it's also, we do it in Chai, which is DAI with the savings rate, interest-bearing aspects built in. And so we're actually giving the NFTs, the digital side of the purchase, a base value, which is kind of an unheard of thing for an NFT. And not only a base value, but it's naturally appreciating because it's earning interest. So if you got a couple $100 out of the profit pool infused into your digital piece and it's earning interest, that's pretty cool because now it's the prices and the value of said item is literally appreciating despite whatever market premium it also exists.
And it's earning interest based on other people buying that same, or the NFT of that same kind of group?
No, it's purely based on the DAI savings rate. So when you lend DAI through Compound or through Aave or through any of these kind of platforms, that 8% or 9% or whatever you're getting, that is basically built into the NFT itself. So it's based on the market action of DAI and the market maker's demand in terms of borrowing from lenders. So you're essentially lending your base value DAI out to those market makers and you're earning your interest on it that way.
Interesting.
And that was because it's a very easy kind of thing to do. So now, yeah, your collectible is earning. And the other fun part of that is if you actually want to get the value out of that digital item, you have to burn it. So you have to destroy it, and you get all the dye out and the interest that comes with it. But in doing so, you're also making all the other items that are out there more scarce and more valuable. So you're kind of helping everybody else if you also burn. So there's a bunch of different game theory levels in exploring kind of that
I have to say, I would love this model for my crypto kitties, because God knows I put too much ETH into my crypto kitties. But have you guys by chance talk to the guys from Dapper? Because you guys have, like, just talking with you, it sounds like you have a lot of like similar thoughts on the way NFT should work, the way on crypto should work for collectibles.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually just talking with Benny yesterday around what we're doing, and he had a bunch of questions, because I'll be completely honest, there's a ton of moving pieces, and the hardest thing for us is really going to be communicating this and making it super digestible, and especially then taking it outside of crypto land and letting anybody with a credit card, and because it's DAI, we can do this, like swipe your credit card, buy the item, and we can actually then host a wallet directly on the platform. So it's like, by the way, you now have a digital collectible. What's a digital collectible? Well, and oh, by the way, did you know you can wear this in crypto voxels? What's crypto voxels? Well, it's this virtual world.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, it's earning interest. How's it earning interest? Meet DeFi. Like it's totally this like segue into like all these crazy concepts. But again, I think it serves as a pretty powerful anchor point. That tangible physical like thing.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting into the real meat of the episode here. There's so many ideas, that go along with what you're talking about. So, Mike, I don't mean to jump in front of you here, but
not at all.
I think there was a point in what you were saying earlier where people kind of don't understand digital goods, and that they can be shown off in a digital way in that sense. And what I'm trying to get at is how scalable I feel like digital art can be from like an economical standpoint. Like if you create 100 pieces of work as a digital artist as compared to a physical artist, how long that actually would take you to do and what you could sell it at just blows my mind. Right. It's so much more scalable. And then the second thing I was thinking about before I pass it on to Mike here was that you guys should be working with all these crypto influencers, man. Like all these crypto influencers with all their followers that have cryptocurrency, and they want to maybe have a digital item of crypto dog, or somebody following crypto Cobain with his own T-shirt. Like that would be really cool to see in MetaFactory. But I'll see.
Yeah, we definitely want to target those people. Again, artists make sense because it's just, obviously like, hey, let's put some awesome design on this different canvas. It's just like, it's an easy jump. For influencers, it's like, yeah, like you got a logo, you got some ideas, we can do some crazy things, make them reversible, have like, we embed physical chips that track to the digital piece. So like we do all sorts of really cool value adds, but yeah, anybody who's got an existing community to leverage, and also they want to reward their community for that support. This is a everybody wins kind of game, and plus it's just a little bit of financial risk, a little bit of some FOMO games, some playing stuff. At the end of the day, you still get a really sweet item, but you could also walk away possibly winning in a sense, right? So
gotcha. Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense, and I think it's a kind of a niche or a category within crypto that is ever expanding. We're not there yet, obviously. I think there's still a lot of folks in crypto who kind of look at the various metaverses that are starting and are like, what's the point, right? Like, why is this kind of the next big thing that everybody's talking about? So, kind of focusing on the third and final arm, I guess, with MetaCartel, right? You have MetaCartel and you have the DAO. MetaFactory is obviously the in-home project, if you will, that you all have started. And then you have MetaCartel Ventures. Is this kind of venture arm the small mini grants that you're talking about, or is this something different? And what are you guys generally looking for when you deploy those mini grants or some sort of other venture investment?
Yeah, so MetaCartel Ventures is really an evolution of the conversation and what we've learned. MetaCartel, the DAO, it is and always will remain a grant-giving DAO. We expect no return We're really doing this to further the space. That's the entire intention. MetaCartel Ventures is acknowledging that now we're being exposed to the deal flow at a quality level and at a rate that I'd say you could put us against any VC who's trying to do something in this space and say that we have access to as many, if not more. And so we're sitting in this opportunity to be able to do pre-seed, seed, early stage investments into projects and actually make that a for-profit venture, and actually expect a return or an equity or what it may be. Primarily, we're looking at tokens, DAO shares, and kind of crypto economic assets because it obviously makes the most sense. But this is very much designed and intended to be something that plays within the bounds of regulation, follows security laws, considers all the important pieces in terms of dotting I's and crossing T's around venture capital and private equity investing rules. So
Gotcha. Yeah, one key piece you talked about there were the kind of various rounds that you guys look at, right? So you said pre-seed. I know some of the in the blog or documentation I've read has said that even you look at like hackathons, right? So I know a lot of your focus isn't on MetaCartel Ventures, but do you have any insight into maybe why some of those super early rounds are more beneficial under the MetaCartel Ventures structure versus like a Series A or Series B, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's the same reason you join one incubator or you decide to go with one venture firm over another. The money is definitely a part of the conversation, but the actual support, the network, the board that comes with that, and how they can direct you in terms of who they're plugged into, what they know, things they've seen. It's the same thing here where the information asymmetry that exists as a result of like where we sit and what we have, like the kind of knowledge flow passing through the organization, allows us to likely be in a better position to help guide over a traditional or non-crypto kind of venture firm. And in terms of some of that kind of like flow from like hackathon, like I would even say you have a hackathon project, it wins, or there's a lot of excitement, there's obviously a need. They can go to MetaCartel DAO and say, hey, I built this thing, I want to finish it. I'd like a grant. Be like, cool, awesome, let's do that. Put it through, vote passes, they get their funds. They've now gotten risk-free grant to finish that idea. They launch, a couple months go by, a couple quarters go by, they prove that it's a sustainable model, there's revenue there. They can then say, hey, MetaCartel Ventures, we actually want to go, like, we want to push hard against this. We think we have something here. We think that we found product market fit. Let's go. And so that kind of like natural path and evolution is what we're looking to create and extend. So
what platforms have been successful doing that model that you just talked about? Would it be any that we maybe know just offhand?
Well, MetaCartel Ventures hasn't officially made any investments yet. This is still like just recently, like brand new. But in terms of, hackathon or project through MetaCartel and success, Mintbase comes to mind. They were able to raise a really like successful round as a result. Sablier, RDI, DeFi's app. There's quite a lot of it has been focused on kind of DeFi space. But yeah, there's been a number of success stories as a result of going through like our grant program, working with us. And again, the signal we provide versus the $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 that micro grant. Again, that might not move the needle, but having a community of people behind you, like pushing you along and giving you advice, definitely can. So.
Yeah, for sure. It for whatever reason brings to mind, I guess, maybe because I spent a lot of time in the hospitality industry, restaurants, beer, so, really ingrained in that. And in the kind of metaphor that comes to mind is the like food truck to restaurant style, right? Where restaurants are super tough. You've got to put up, if you want a really large space in a primary, you've got to really put up over $1 million, somewhere in the 7-figure range. Huge overhead, but obviously under the food truck model, which has exploded, you can go wherever you want, right? And the capital required is obviously much less. So that's,
or even a kitchen to food truck to, like out of my kitchen, that's
Yeah.
that's the
kitchens.
hackathon.
Here you go.
Yeah, that's the hackathon. It's like, hey, family. It's like, yeah. It's like, we'll buy your tamales. Like
right.
whatever it is. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm based in Pittsburgh, so we haven't quite gotten to the cloud kitchens yet, but I'm sure it's
Yeah.
I'm sure it's coming. But one thing I wanted to ask you, right? Understanding what MetaCartel has done to date, and some of the things you guys are obviously looking to do, it's very different from the traditional venture model. A lot of times, I feel like the venture model, especially in crypto, has kind of gotten a bad rap because they come in early, they provide cash. Hopefully they provide some sort of other fundamental benefit by, helping bring on developers to that project or introducing them to other, key relationships. But at the end of the day, a lot of people are worried that these early stage investors are getting, say, tokens or equity at a really cheap price and then kind of dumping them on Series A or maybe some of those
Yep.
other investors in public markets. So what are kind of your thoughts on how venture and crypto has shifted from, ICOs to now this new venture model, and where do you guys see yourself solving a lot of those problems?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Again, a totally brand new project in terms of like where this is going to go, but just looking at what's happened generally with DAOs, which I would say MetaCartel Ventures is, again, it's a DAO with some rules put around it and some constraints as a result. But we're recognizing, I guess, the cultural power, and also trying to democratize the process and the ability for people to participate. Also to be able to have like governance and involvement in directing that like project to an extent, or and that could be at the community level, it could be in the investor level. And I think like just like we, with MetaFactory, we're trying to kind of democratize brand creation and brand economies, or product economies and stuff. We're trying to do that's just like a microcosmic representation of like what we're trying to do at the project and product and business and company level. So yeah, I think there's some really interesting things that will be seen around like instead of everybody in the ventures arm saying, all right, let's now dump this on Series A, or let's dump this on retailers. It's like, look, we've built this thing, we actually believe in it, let's hold on to it, let's make them bigger, let's turn this into the Amazon of Web3. Let's turn this into the I think that yeah, you see, like I think there's a loyalty that's built, and an interest beyond just the financial gain. Don't get me wrong, that side's always going to be exist, it's always going to be the value. But I think there are some VCs that do this well, and have taken more like incubator model, like YC, and then they build their network, and then they grow into this. As you graduate out, you kind of maybe make your way back, and then you help others. You pay it forward, right? And I think that's like a kind of a tenet that is going to be really strongly witnessed in kind of what MetaCartel Ventures is doing, and that example I think is going to be really powerful to others who are trying to do investments in this space, and especially when the project's making a decision and like which way to go, and the VCs deciding like their strategy and how they execute. So or I guess maybe that's just the idealist in me talking. I'd hope that was is where things would go, and I hope the kind of like some of the tools and the culture being built around these things will carry it that way.
Yeah, I gotta say, Amazon, those are some big dreams, man. But
You gotta throw it out.
But to be honest, man, that's how we kind of feel about layer one in a way. Like it's about quality. It's almost the antithesis. You guys are almost doing the antithesis of what ICOs were, that were just purely driven by hype, right? Purely driven by financial gain. And I think you still see that in crypto, and you always kind of will, right? But I think just providing quality content, providing transparent, community-based stuff, I think that's what crypto needs to move forward in so that people can maybe start trusting us a little bit more when we try to bring crypto into the conversation at the dinner table. But anyways, let's hop into, because I think we got like 10 minutes left. Let's hop into MetaFactory a little bit. Let's talk about the user experience, right? Because you talked about how you're going to create physical items attached to digital goods or vice versa. And I also want to talk about this marketplace, right? So like from a user perspective, I want to create a brand. I've created a company. How do I go about creating my brand and making these digital items? Do you do that for me? Do I just have to provide a template?
Yeah.
And are you allowing me, the marketplace, to then do that?
So it's very much like a white glove experience for now. Can anticipate that we'll like open it up and allow for users to come in and kind of launch their own auctions or sales and choose from a variety of different models. But yeah, it's for now. It's definitely like we hold your hand, and the real value add is we're going to handle all the production. We're going to handle all the actual technical design work, all the fulfillment, shipping, running the auction. So artists just need to focus on their art.
Mm-hmm.
We basically are really lowering the barrier to entry for somebody to create one of these brands. And this is typically a very elusive or outpriced industry in terms of getting involved in making like really high-end custom quality, like luxury goods of any sort. So yeah, we can work from everything from sketches, Photoshop files, Illustrator. We'll usually do a little bit of a creative back and forth, but we kind of just want to facilitate the artist, let them do what they want to do. We pass it over to our production partner, work with them to actually create technical specs. If they have reservations around the fidelity that can be achieved of some sort of detail or some quality or whatnot, we'll go back and it's kind of do this back and forth. The artist can actually specify materials. They can say eco-friendly, sustainable. They can designate, I want it USA made. They might want a very specific wash that can only be achieved by some team in Japan. So all these things are going to affect price point and various, it's all going to come into the actual execution side, but all that's on the table and available. So yeah, it's, right now it's a very kind of manual process between usually myself and our creative director and the artist or the creator.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we get to a point where we're ready, we're like, cool, here's the designs are going to look like. What do you think? Awesome. Okay, let's do it. Run the auction. Again, it's a crowd fund. We don't actually have to like bid and put the order in until we've actually satisfied and we know exactly how much we're making, how many we're making and sizing, all that stuff. So that's also kind of a cool benefit of the approach.
And do you have some type of dev that's working on creating the actual digital item in this metaverse space?
Yeah. So some of the artists themselves, again, at least initially coming from Web3, are themselves voxel creators. So for crypto voxels, it's all based on voxel assets, which are kind of these blocky. It's actually a chosen artistic style for like Minecraft and other types of platforms, but it's that format. Some of the artists themselves build it. We have a number of also voxel makers that we've been collaborating with that will be able to do that on behalf of our artist partners. So we can do that for any of our partners moving forward. It's kind of just like a commission work. There's also some really cool stuff around if we want to get you can imagine going from like a really crazy printed shirt like physical space to a digital voxel, that blocky kind of translation. There's ways to actually break a jacket or a shirt into multiple chunks. So the shoulder, the arm, the wrist or forearm, the torso, the back, and you kind of have to like construct it yourself in the wearable end, but we can achieve like way higher fidelity as a result. So we're going to be experimenting with some of those things and see what we can bring to the table. Likely, in addition to, if the wearables are broken up, we'll probably be issuing like representative NFT, kind of an art piece that goes with it. That might actually act as your kind of charged, infused value piece. And then the wearables is kind of part and parcel and complement. So Decentraland ended up, what's cool about voxels too is both crypto voxels and now Sandbox, which is another emergent, they're both voxel asset based. Decentraland is kind of unique to itself. They also haven't opened up the UGC custom wearable side quite yet. So waiting to see how that goes, and likely we'll be doing something where we can create a single unit that's interoperable, or we'll be just dropping like multiple like multiple metaverse platforms onto the artists themselves, because we're really bullish and we really believe that in what's happening in this metaverse virtual world experience, the ability to personalize an avatar and to actualize yourself and see yourself, or like represent yourself in a unique way in those spaces, is actually what brings that emotional connection and value. And I think that's going to be a really important thing in terms of actually pushing adoption in those spaces and helping to kind of like drive that engine forward, and the economics around it. So
yeah, we're gamers ourselves here at Layer One, so we understand kind of the in-game, I guess, assets, how it's moved from kind of purchasing the game and then getting all of it at one time to now having these free-to-play games where, I mean, Riot Games is the creator of League of Legends. They're almost solely funded based on skin sales, right? Like they're literally, I've spent hundreds of dollars, no, I wouldn't say hundreds.
Millions of dollars.
Thousands.
Yeah, I spent money on wearing skins, right? And then they work with Gucci to bring a Gucci something into the actual game. So I can see all the ways where this can work. And, I think we've touched on MetaFactory a bunch. Is there anything else before we kind of like zoom out and then just kind of outro?
I mean, I think I've gone pretty deep down the rabbit hole. I mean, I think that people should really, if you haven't yet, I would definitely recommend jumping into crypto voxels, jumping into Decentraland, seeing what this stuff is about. It's crude in its artistic style and in its experience as well, to some extent right now, especially depending on what kind of computer you're on. But I think you'll be surprised if you believed in blockchain and saw what happened with this. I think that this, that translation exists there as well. So yeah, and also if you're a gamer and you understand what's happened with skins and how people are creating massive multi-million-dollar companies based on selling of aesthetics, this isn't a very far reach. Yeah, the fun fact, I actually went to school with and was close friends with Brandon Beck, his brother Dustin. So I know the Riot family very well.
Oh my goodness.
Brandon being the founder of Riot. So yeah, that's like there's definitely a funny like connection. I come from like big gaming background myself, and like reread Snow Crash pretty frequently, so Ready Player One. These things are definitely part of the motivation, and I think it's a natural thing. Like we're looking at world events, coronavirus, and we have the technology to do amazing remote work. I mean, look at us. We're in probably 3 different cities here having a great conversation. We could probably keep going for hours. So if we could do this same thing as avatars in VR, or even just on our computer screens, and be able to be collaborating, throwing up pictures, talking about stuff, laser pointer, like a lot of that stuff already exists. It's just going to be a matter of time before we were able to actualize it in an experience that gets most people excited versus where we're at right now.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way to summarize it. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard here first, MetaFactory and Riot Games, soon to be partnering, it sounds like. No, just,
I wish, I hope. Yeah. I need to reach out to them and be like, I'm working on this fun new thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember playing Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne back in the day when Dota first started to, I don't know if you, were you a player of Warcraft 3 by any chance? Yeah. That's amazing. To see Riot Games come out of what essentially was a custom game is amazing. So, Mike, did you have something before we outro here?
No, I think this is perfect. We basically hit you with 2 final questions. The first one being one that doesn't have to be related to crypto whatsoever. We need one book recommendation from you. It could be one you've read recently, one you've read a long time ago, but just one book recommendation.
It's got to be Snow Crash. It fits too well. If you haven't read it, you're a sci-fi fan, you're interested in metaverse, technological, like innovation and evolution, I definitely think you should take a look at that book.
That's the second Snow Crash recommendation on this podcast, so that you have to hit that book. Wow, amazing. And then the last question would be, where can someone find everything about MetaFactory, everything about Drew?
Yeah, the best place is probably crypto Twitter,
Yep.
to be honest. At the MetaFactory on Twitter. Our URL is metafactory.ai. Right now, it's still a lander. We're really hopeful we're going to have first auction up in the next couple weeks. So to pay attention to that, I'm sure we'll be spamming the Twitter. We have a Genesis kind of community chat on Telegram as well. That's linked to from the homepage. So if you really want to get in to ask questions, feel free to do that. And then me personally, I'm at Drew Harding on Twitter, and feel free to reach out to me as well.
Awesome, man. Well, that's beautiful. We appreciate the time. It sounds like you guys are really working on some awesome stuff. Maybe 6-7 months from now, we'll have you back on and see where MetaCartel is gone, see where MetaFactory is gone. But from us and all of our listeners, thanks a lot.
Of course, it was a pleasure. Anytime.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to check out Layer 1 on all the audio and video platforms listed in the description. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next week.